Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the English in Fluency podcast. I am your host, Alex, and I am truly grateful that you are here with me today. Take a deep breath, let it out slowly, and relax your shoulders. This is your time to not only practice your English listening, but also to explore ideas that can truly help you in your real life. Today, we have a very special and quite deep topic to discuss together. We are going to talk about how to make better decisions in life. Now, I know that might sound like a serious topic, but it is actually something that affects us every single day, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. We all make decisions, big and small. But have you ever stopped to think about how you make them? Do you trust yourself? Or do you often feel confused and worried about picking the wrong path? If you have ever felt stuck, unsure, or afraid of making a choice, then this episode is for you. My goal today is not just to teach you new vocabulary or phrases, although we will definitely do that, but to help you understand the psychology and the habits behind good decision-making. Think of this as a guide to becoming a more confident person, both in English and in life. The beautiful thing about this topic is that decision-making is a skill, just like grammar or vocabulary. It is not a magic talent that some people are born with and others are not. It is something you can practice, improve, and master over time. So, as we go through this episode, I want you to listen with an open mind. Do not judge your past choices. Instead, just listen, reflect, and see if you can find a new way to look at the challenges you face. We have a lot to cover, so let's begin this journey together with a calm and positive mindset. To understand how to make better decisions, we first need to change the way we think about what a decision actually is. Many people believe that making a decision is simply choosing between right and wrong, like there is one perfect answer hidden somewhere and we just have to find it. But real life is rarely that simple. In reality, we rarely have a clear right or wrong option. Instead, we usually have two or more different paths, each with its own advantages, risks, and uncertainties. For example, deciding to move to a new city for a job is not about right or wrong. Both staying and leaving have good points and bad points. The new job might offer more money but less comfort. Staying might offer safety but less growth. Because there is no perfect answer, looking for perfection can actually be very dangerous. This is what we call perfectionism. Perfectionism is the voice in your head that says, "If I cannot choose the perfect option, I should not choose at all." It makes you wait for a guarantee that never comes. You might find yourself waiting for the perfect time to start a new project, the perfect moment to have a difficult conversation, or the perfect opportunity to change your career. While you are waiting for perfection, life keeps moving forward, and you might miss out on beautiful opportunities simply because you were afraid of making a mistake. We need to shift our thinking from trying to be perfect to trying to be healthy. A healthy decision is one that you make with clarity, honesty, and courage, accepting that you cannot control the future. One of the biggest reasons we struggle to make healthy decisions is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, and even fear of success can freeze our minds. Have you ever felt that tight feeling in your chest when you have to make a choice? That is fear trying to protect you, but sometimes it protects you too much. It keeps you in your comfort zone, which feels safe, but it also stops you from growing. Imagine a person who wants to learn English but is afraid to speak because they might make a grammar mistake. If they let that fear control them, they will never speak, and they will never improve. The decision to stay silent feels safe, but it is actually a decision to remain stuck. To make better decisions, we have to learn to make friends with our fear, to acknowledge that it is there, but not let it drive the car. We have to learn to drive the car ourselves, even if our hands are shaking a little bit. Another important concept in decision-making is momentum. Think of your life like a bicycle. When you are pedaling, you are moving forward, and it is easier to keep your balance. When you stop pedaling because you are unsure which way to turn, you start to wobble, and eventually, you fall over. Making decisions creates momentum. Even a small decision, like deciding to read for 10 minutes a day, or deciding to go for a walk, gets you moving. Once you are moving, you can always adjust your direction. But if you stand still, you cannot steer. This is why taking action, even imperfect action, is often better than doing nothing. When you make a decision, you learn something. You learn what works and what does not work. You learn more about yourself. So, instead of asking yourself, "What if I make a mistake?" try asking yourself, "What if this decision helps me grow?" That small shift in language can change your entire perspective. It moves you from a place of fear to a place of curiosity. Let's talk a bit about the psychology behind our choices. Our brains are incredible, but they can also trick us. One thing that affects our decisions is our mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you might believe that you are not good at making decisions, so you don't even try. You might say, "I am just bad at this." But if you have a growth mindset, you believe that you can learn. You see a difficult choice not as a test of your intelligence, but as a chance to exercise your decision-making muscle. Just like lifting weights makes your muscles stronger, making decisions makes your mind sharper and more confident. The more decisions you make, the better you will get at trusting your gut feeling. That intuition, that inner sense of what is right, is not magic. It is actually your brain's way of using all your past experiences very quickly to guide you. But to build that intuition, you have to practice deciding. Clarity is also essential for good decision-making. It is very hard to make a good choice when your mind is full of noise. What do I mean by noise? I mean stress, worry, other people's opinions, and too much information. In the modern world, we are constantly bombarded with information. We see social media posts telling us how we should live, news about things we cannot control, and messages from people who want things from us. All of this noise clouds our judgment. To make better decisions, you need to find moments of quiet. You need to clear the mental desk so you can see the papers in front of you. This is why practices like meditation, journaling, or just taking a walk in nature are so helpful. They are not just relaxing. They are practical tools for clearing your mind. When your mind is clear, your values become visible. You start to see what actually matters to you, not what other people say should matter. This brings us to the concept of emotional regulation. Emotions are beautiful and necessary, but they can be terrible advisors if we let them take full control. For example, if you are very angry, you might make a decision that hurts a relationship just because you want to release that anger. In that moment, the emotion feels like the truth. But later, when the anger fades, you often regret the choice. The same happens with excitement. Have you ever bought something expensive because you were excited in the moment, and then later regretted it when the excitement wore off? That is making a decision based on a temporary emotion rather than your long-term values. To make better decisions, we need to learn to press the pause button. We need to create a tiny gap between the feeling and the action. In that gap, we have the power to choose. We can ask ourselves, is this emotion driving me, or am I driving me? I want to share a story with you now about a friend of mine named Julian. Julian's story is a perfect example of how difficult and how important decision-making can be. A few years ago, Julian was working as a manager in a large, successful company in a busy city. From the outside, his life looked perfect. He had a good salary, a nice apartment, and people respected him. He had worked hard for 10 years to get to that position, but inside, Julian was unhappy. He felt like a cog in a machine, doing work that did not matter to him. His true passion had always been working with his hands, specifically woodworking and furniture making. He loved the smell of wood, the creativity of design, and the satisfaction of building something tangible. Julian faced a very difficult decision. Should he stay in his safe, high-paying job that he hated? Or should he quit and start his own small woodworking business? This was not a simple choice. If he stayed, he would be financially secure, but mentally drained and unfulfilled. If he left, he would be following his passion, but he risked losing his apartment, his status, and his financial safety. He was terrified. His mind was filled with self-doubt. He thought, what if I fail? What if I am not actually good enough to make money as a carpenter? What if my family thinks I am crazy for giving up such a good job? These questions spun around in his head for months. He suffered from analysis paralysis, which means he was so busy analyzing the options that he could not take any action. He felt stuck between two worlds, comfortable in his misery, but afraid of the unknown. For a long time, Julian tried to ignore the feeling. He tried to distract himself with TV, social media, and buying expensive things, but the feeling of emptiness remained. One evening, he was sitting in his office late at night, looking at the city lights through the window. He realized that 10 years had passed, and he had been waiting for the right time to pursue his passion for a decade. He suddenly understood that the right time would never come. The conditions would never be perfect. There would always be bills to pay and risks to take. He realized that the pain of staying the same was actually becoming greater than the fear of change. This is a crucial turning point in decision-making. When the cost of inaction becomes higher than the cost of action, that is when people usually decide to move. So, Julian decided to take a step, but he did not do it blindly. He used a method called the slow down to speed up approach. Instead of quitting the next day, he started small. He took evening classes in woodworking. He spent his weekends building small tables and chairs in his garage. He talked to other carpenters and learned about the business. He saved as much money as he could from his job to create a safety net. He was gathering information and building his confidence gradually. This process took about a year. During that year, he still felt fear, but he also felt excitement. He was building momentum. He was no longer just thinking. He was doing. Finally, the day came when Julian handed in his resignation letter. It was a terrifying moment. His hands were shaking as he walked into his boss's office. but he also felt a sense of lightness, a weight lifting off his shoulders. The first few months of his new business were incredibly hard. He made less money than before. He worked longer hours. He made mistakes with his tools and wasted expensive wood. There were nights when he lay awake worrying if he had made a terrible mistake. But he remembered why he started. He remembered the feeling of creating something with his own hands. He kept going. Fast forward to today, Julian runs a successful workshop. He doesn't earn as much money as he did in the corporate world, but he is happier than he has ever been. He wakes up in the morning excited to start his day. He feels proud of his work. When I asked Julian what he learned from this experience, he told me something very powerful. He said that waiting for certainty was the biggest mistake he made. He said that we often think we need to see the whole staircase before we take the first step. But life doesn't work like that. You usually only need to see the next step, and the light will turn on once you move. He also learned that making a wrong decision is not the end of the world. If he had tried woodworking and failed completely, he could have always gone back to the corporate world or tried something else. Failure is not a dead end. It is just a detour that teaches you something new. His story teaches us that a good decision isn't one that guarantees a perfect outcome. A good decision is one that aligns with who you are and who you want to become. Let's take a moment to apply Julian's story to our own lives. You might not be thinking about changing your career, but we all have our own versions of the safe job versus the woodworking shop. Maybe it is deciding whether to stay in a relationship that doesn't make you happy. Maybe it is deciding to go back to school as an adult student. Maybe it is deciding to finally prioritize your health. The size of the decision doesn't matter as much as the process. The fear you feel is the same fear Julian felt. The self-doubt is the same. The solution is also the same. You need to clarify your values, accept that you cannot predict the future, manage your emotions, and then take a step. It does not have to be a giant leap. It can be a small, cautious step, like Julian taking evening classes. What matters is that you move. We often look at successful people and think they just got lucky, or that they are somehow different from us. But if you look closely at their stories, you will see that they made many decisions. They made good decisions, and they made bad ones. But they didn't let the fear of a bad decision stop them. They understood that not deciding is actually a decision too. When you refuse to choose, you are choosing to let things happen to you instead of making things happen for you. You are giving away your power. So, I encourage you to take your power back. Start small. Look at the decisions in front of you right now. Maybe it is just deciding what to eat for dinner, deciding to go to bed early, or deciding to send that email you have been avoiding. Practice making those small decisions with intention. Pay attention to how it feels. Build that trust with yourself. Now that we have reflected on the mindset and identified the cost of inaction, let us move into the practical side of things. I want to share with you some very specific tools that you can use immediately to improve the quality of your choices. Think of these tools like a compass or a map. When you are lost in a forest of options and confusion, these tools will help you find your way north. As we discuss these tools, I want you to think about specific situations in your own life where you could apply them. Do not just listen passively. Try to visualize yourself using these methods. This active engagement is the best way to learn English and to learn life skills at the same time. The first tool I want to share with you is one of my personal favorites because it is so simple yet so effective. I call it the 24-hour rule. We live in a world that demands instant responses. We get an email, and we feel we must reply immediately. We see a product for sale, and we feel the urge to buy it right now. We have an argument with someone, and we want to have the last word instantly. But acting quickly, especially when we are emotional, is often where we make our biggest mistakes. The 24-hour rule is straightforward. If you are facing a decision that is not an absolute emergency, give yourself permission to wait 24 hours before making a final choice. This rule is particularly powerful for decisions driven by strong emotions like anger, excitement, or sadness. When you are angry, your brain is in a state of fight or flight. You are not thinking logically. You are reacting to a threat. If you send that angry email or make that harsh comment, you cannot take it back. The damage is done. But if you wait 24 hours, you give your rational brain time to catch up. The intense emotion usually settles down, and you can see the situation more clearly. You might still decide to send the email, but it will likely be written in a much calmer and more professional way. The same logic applies to exciting opportunities. Imagine you see an advertisement for a course or a vacation that looks amazing. You feel a rush of excitement and want to sign up immediately. But if you wait 24 hours, you might realize that you don't actually have the time or the money for it. The excitement fades, and reality sets in. This rule protects you from impulse. It creates a buffer zone between your feelings and your actions. So, the next time you feel pressured to decide quickly, simply say to yourself, "I will think about this and decide tomorrow." It gives you control back. Another powerful tool that complements the 24-hour rule is something I like to call the three-option method. Have you ever noticed that when we have to make a decision, we often trap ourselves by thinking there are only two choices? This is called binary thinking. For example, if you are unhappy in your job, you might think, "I have to quit," or "I have to stay and suffer." Or in a relationship, you might think, "We have to break up," or "We have to get married immediately." Seeing only two options creates a lot of pressure, because often neither option feels perfect. Staying feels bad, and quitting feels scary. This pressure can cause us to freeze. The three-option method breaks this deadlock. The rule is that you must force yourself to come up with a third option. A third option is usually a creative middle ground, or a completely different perspective that you hadn't considered yet. Let's go back to the job example. Option 1 is quit. Option 2 is stay and be unhappy. What could option 3 be? Maybe option 3 is to stay at the job, but start looking for a new one in your free time. Or option 3 could be to talk to your manager about changing your responsibilities. Or option 3 could be to stay but reduce your hours to study. Suddenly, the situation feels less like a trap and more like a puzzle you can solve. Let's try another example. You want to get fit, but you hate the gym. Option 1. Go to the gym and be miserable. Option 2. Do nothing and stay unhealthy. Option 3. Maybe you find a sport you actually enjoy, like hiking or dancing, or maybe you buy a bicycle. By introducing a third option, you engage your creativity. You move your brain from a mode of panic to a mode of problem solving. Try this the next time you feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. Ask yourself, is there a third way I haven't seen yet? As we practice these tools, it is also important to understand the role of values in our decision-making. Our values are the things that are most important to us in life, like freedom, security, family, honesty, growth, or adventure. When we make decisions that go against our core values, we almost always end up feeling uncomfortable, regretful, or unhappy, even if the decision looks good on paper. For instance, imagine a person named Sarah, whose highest value is family time. She is offered a promotion at work that comes with a significant salary increase. Logically, it seems like a good decision. More money is usually a good thing. However, the new job requires her to travel 4 days a week and work late every night. If she takes the job, she will violate her value of family time. She will have the money, but she will feel empty and stressed. On the other hand, if her highest value was financial security or career achievement, the same job might be perfect for her. This is why there is no right decision for everyone. The right decision for you depends entirely on what you value. To use this tool, you first need to be clear about your values. You might take a piece of paper and write down your top 5 values. Then, when you have a difficult choice to make, you can look at your options through this lens. Ask yourself, does this choice align with my values? Or, which option honors what is most important to me? This brings a deep sense of clarity to the process. It helps you say no to good opportunities that are not right for you, so you can say yes to the ones that are. Let's talk about another very common situation where we struggle with decisions, and that is in our relationships. Decisions involving other people are often the hardest because our emotions are involved, and we care about hurting or upsetting someone we love. A frequent scenario is deciding whether to have a difficult conversation. Maybe a friend said something that hurt your feelings, or a colleague constantly interrupts you. You have to decide, do I speak up, or do I stay silent to keep the peace? Many people choose silence because they are afraid of conflict. They think that speaking up will make the situation worse. But staying silent is also a decision. It is a decision to tolerate disrespect or to let resentment grow. Over time, this resentment can damage the relationship even more than the original argument. To make a better decision in these moments, try to look at the long-term health of the relationship, not just the short-term comfort. Ask yourself, if I don't say anything now, how will I feel about this relationship in a year? Often, we find that having the difficult conversation is actually the most loving thing we can do, because it clears the air and allows the relationship to grow. Of course, the way you speak up matters. It is not about attacking the other person. It is about expressing your feelings honestly and respectfully. Using phrases like "I feel" instead of "you always" can make a huge difference. This turns a decision about fighting into a decision about connecting. Now, let's shift our focus to how we deal with the outcome of our decisions. We talk a lot about making the right choice, but the truth is, sometimes we will make a choice that turns out to be a mistake. We might buy a car that breaks down, we might trust someone who lies to us, or we might take a job that we end up hating. This is an inevitable part of life. The way we react to these mistakes is actually more important than the mistake itself. Many people, when they realize they made a wrong decision, spiral into shame and regret. They beat themselves up. They say, "I am so stupid," or "Why did I do that?" This negative self-talk is damaging and useless. It keeps you stuck in the past. A better decision-maker approach is to treat mistakes as data. Think of yourself as a scientist. If a scientist runs an experiment and the result is not what they expected, they don't cry and call themselves a bad scientist. They analyze the data. They say, "Interesting. That didn't work. Why not? What variable was different?" Then they adjust the experiment and try again. You can do the same with your life decisions. If you make a mistake, get curious instead of angry. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What was the warning sign I ignored? How can I prevent this from happening in the future? This changes the mistake from a failure into a lesson. This concept is often called failing forward. You are still moving forward, even if you stumbled. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Priya to illustrate this point. Priya had always dreamed of opening her own bakery. She loved baking, and her friends told her her cookies were the best. After years of saving, she finally decided to rent a small shop and open Priya's Sweets. She was very excited. She spent all her savings on renovations, equipment, and ingredients. However, she made a big mistake in her decision-making process. She was so focused on the baking and the decor that she forgot to check the location properly. The street she chose was under construction, which blocked the view of her shop and made it very difficult for customers to park. For the first 6 months, business was terrible. Priya was devastated. She felt like a complete failure. She had lost her savings, and she felt embarrassed that her dream had crashed so hard. She spent weeks crying and feeling sorry for herself. She thought she was just not cut out to be a business owner. But eventually, the pain of failure became less sharp, and she started to think clearly again. She realized that her baking wasn't the problem. The location was the problem. She couldn't afford to move the shop, so she had to pivot. She decided to close the physical store and focus entirely on online orders and delivering to local offices. She used social media to show her baking process and started taking custom orders for parties and weddings. This decision to adapt changed everything. Without the high rent of the physical store, she started making a profit. Her online presence grew, and she built a loyal customer base. Looking back, Priya says that closing the shop was the best thing that happened to her, even though it felt like a disaster at the time. If she hadn't made that initial mistake, she would have been stuck in a struggling shop for years. The mistake forced her to be creative and to find a business model that was actually much better for her lifestyle. Her story teaches us that a wrong decision is not the end of the story. It is often just the beginning of a new chapter. We need to stop treating our mistakes as character flaws and start treating them as feedback. Another aspect of making better decisions is learning to trust your intuition. We have spent a lot of time talking about logic and analysis, but we should not ignore our gut feeling. Intuition is that subtle, quiet sense of knowing something without knowing exactly why you know it. It is not magic. It is your subconscious mind processing millions of pieces of information and past experiences very quickly. Sometimes your logical brain will say one thing, but your stomach will feel tight or uncomfortable. Or you might feel a light, expansive feeling in your chest when you think about a certain choice. It is important to listen to these physical signals. For example, Imagine you are interviewing for a new job. On paper, it looks perfect. The salary is high, the title is impressive, and the office is beautiful. Your logical brain says, "Take it." But when you were in the interview, you felt a little uneasy. The people seemed cold, or the boss didn't make eye contact. You have a knot in your stomach that you cannot explain. That is your intuition telling you that something is off. Many people ignore this feeling because they cannot explain it logically, but later they often wish they had listened. The key is to balance logic and intuition. Use the logical tools like the 24-hour rule or the 3-option method to gather facts, but then check in with your body. How does this decision feel? Do I feel heavy or light? Do I feel contracted or expanded? Learning to read these signals takes practice, but it is a valuable skill for navigating life. As we continue to practice these skills, we also need to be aware of the influence of other people. We are social creatures, and the opinions of our family, friends, and society play a huge role in our decisions. This can be both positive and negative. On the positive side, our loved ones can give us support and perspective we might not see ourselves. On the negative side, they can project their own fears and biases onto us. For example, a parent might discourage you from taking a risk in your career because they are afraid for your safety, even though that risk might be exactly what you need. A friend might judge your choice of partner because they don't understand them. To make better decisions, you have to learn to distinguish between helpful advice and noise. You must become the CEO of your own life. You can listen to advice, but you do not have to follow it blindly. A good practice is to ask yourself, if this person weren't giving me this advice, what would I do? Or, is this person warning me about a real danger? Or are they projecting their own fear? Sometimes we make decisions just to please others, to avoid disappointing them. This is called people-pleasing, and it is a recipe for unhappiness. When you make a choice just to please someone else, even if it goes against your own values, you will eventually resent them. It is important to realize that you cannot live someone else's life for them, and they cannot live yours. You are responsible for your own happiness. That means sometimes you have to make decisions that others might not understand, and you have to be okay with that. Let's take a moment to talk about a specific tool that helps with long-term thinking, which is the 10-10-10 rule. This is a fantastic tool for seeing the bigger picture when you are caught up in the moment. The idea is to think about how you will feel about your decision in 10 minutes, in 10 months, and in 10 years. Let's look at an example. Imagine you are trying to decide whether to eat a large, unhealthy dessert after dinner when you are trying to be healthy. In 10 minutes, you will feel happy and satisfied. It will taste good. In 10 months, it probably won't matter. You won't remember this specific dessert. But if you do this every night, in 10 months, your health might be worse, or you might feel bad about your lack of discipline. In 10 years, eating this one dessert will definitely not matter at all. The 10-10-10 rule helps you realize that most daily decisions are not life or death, but they form patterns. If the 10-minute pleasure causes a 10-month problem, you might want to skip it. On the flip side, imagine you are nervous about giving a presentation at work. In 10 minutes, you might feel scared and anxious. In 10 months, you will be proud that you did it, and it might have helped you get a promotion. In 10 years, this one presentation will be a distant memory. But the confidence you built by doing it will have shaped your career. So, even though the 10-minute feeling is fear, the 10-month and 10-year feeling is growth. This tool helps you endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain. It is a great way to train your brain to prioritize the future over the present moment. We have covered a lot of ground regarding specific tools. We talked about the 24-hour rule to manage impulsiveness, the 3-option method to expand your thinking, and the importance of aligning your decisions with your values. We discussed how to handle mistakes like a scientist, how to listen to your intuition, and how to filter the opinions of others. We also looked at the 10-10-10 rule for long-term perspective. These are all powerful instruments in your decision-making toolkit. But remember, knowing about these tools is different from using them. Knowledge is only potential power. Action is real power. It is like knowing how to do a push-up. You can read all about the technique, but your muscles won't get stronger until you actually get down on the floor and do it. I encourage you to pick just one of these tools and try it out this week. Maybe you will use the 24-hour rule the next time you feel angry. Maybe you will use the 3-option method for a problem you are facing at work. See how it feels. Notice if it reduces your stress or helps you see things more clearly. While these mental tools are powerful, we must also consider the physical environment in which we make these choices. Making good decisions is not just about what you do in a moment of crisis. It is about how you live every single day. It is about the habits you build, the people you surround yourself with, and the way you take care of your physical and mental health. When you design your life well, good decisions become the default, rather than a struggle. One of the most overlooked factors in decision-making is your physical state. We often try to separate our minds from our bodies, thinking we can make brilliant choices even when we are exhausted, hungry, or stressed. But this is rarely true. Your brain is an organ, just like your heart or your lungs. It needs fuel and rest to function properly. Have you ever noticed that when you are very tired, everything seems more dramatic? A small problem feels like a disaster. A difficult choice feels impossible. This happens because, when you are tired, the part of your brain responsible for logic and long-term planning gets weaker, and the part responsible for emotions and impulses takes over. This is often referred to as the HALT rule, which stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You should never make major decisions when you are in any of these states. If you are trying to decide whether to end a relationship, make a big purchase, or send an important email, but you haven't slept well or you haven't eaten, stop. Your brain is literally not working at full capacity. The best decision you can make in that moment is to eat something healthy, take a nap, or go for a walk. You will be amazed at how much clearer your thinking becomes after a meal or a good night of sleep. Taking care of your body is actually a form of taking care of your mind. Similarly, the environment you live in has a massive impact on your decisions. Human beings are very sensitive to their surroundings. We often copy the behavior of the people around us, and we are easily influenced by what is in front of us. This is known as nudging in psychology. For example, if you want to eat healthier, but your kitchen counter is filled with cookies and chips, you are making a bad decision every time you walk into the kitchen. You are using your willpower to resist the cookies. Willpower is like a battery. It runs out. By the end of the day, you will likely get tired and eat the cookies. However, if you change your environment and put a bowl of fruit on the counter and hide the cookies in a high cupboard or throw them away, you change the default. Now, the easy choice is the healthy choice. You don't need willpower to eat an apple if it is the only thing on the table. You can apply this to English learning too. If you want to practice English, but your books are hidden in a drawer and your phone is full of games in your native language, you will likely play games. But if you put English books on your pillow, change your phone language to English, or listen to this podcast automatically during your commute, you are designing an environment where practicing English is the easiest option. Look around your home and your workplace. Are you setting yourself up for success, or are you making it hard for yourself to do what you want to do? Another essential element of a decision-friendly lifestyle is the company you keep. We are deeply social creatures, and we subconsciously adopt the standards of the people we spend the most time with. If your friends are always complaining, blaming others, and making impulsive choices, it is very hard for you to be patient and intentional. You might feel like the odd one out if you try to improve yourself. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who are curious, who take responsibility for their lives, and who are working towards their own goals, their energy will lift you up. You don't even need to talk about decision-making. Just being around them will influence your habits. This is why finding a community, or even just one friend who supports your growth, is so powerful. This could be an English learning partner, a mentor, or a positive colleague. You want to be around people who ask you, "What are you working toward?" instead of people who say, "Why bother?" Sometimes, we have to make the difficult decision to distance ourselves from negative influences. This is not about being mean to people. It is about protecting your own future. You have the right to choose who has access to your energy and your mind. Let's talk about the concept of identity. This is perhaps the deepest level of decision-making. We usually make decisions based on one of three levels. The first level is outcomes. You want to lose 10 kilos. The second level is processes. You go to the gym 3 times a week. But the third and most powerful level is identity. Identity is your belief about who you are. Instead of saying, "I am trying to quit smoking," a powerful identity shift would be to say, "I am not a smoker." Instead of saying, "I am trying to learn English," say, "I am an English speaker. It is part of who I am." When you make a decision based on identity, it becomes almost effortless. If someone offers you a cigarette and you identify as a non-smoker, you don't have to struggle to say no. You simply say, "No thanks, I don't smoke." It is not a fight. It is just a fact about who you are. If you want to make better decisions in life, ask yourself, who is the person I want to be? Do you want to be a healthy person? A kind person? A brave person? A curious person? Once you decide on that identity, you can ask, what would a healthy person do in this situation? Or, what would a brave person do right now? This moves your decision-making away from a list of rules and towards a sense of character. It feels much more natural and sustainable. I want to share a final story with you to illustrate this power of identity and small choices. This is a story about a man named Elias. Elias was not a famous celebrity or a billionaire. He was a regular person who worked as a teacher. When Elias was young, He made a lot of impulsive decisions. He would spend money he didn't have on things he didn't need, and he would get into arguments over small things. He felt like his life was chaotic and out of control. One day, he realized that if he wanted to be happy, he couldn't just wait for big things to happen. He had to change the small things. He decided he wanted to be the kind of man who was calm and reliable. So, he started making tiny decisions that reflected that identity. When he felt angry, he decided to take 3 deep breaths before speaking. When he wanted to buy something expensive, he decided to wait 3 days. He started keeping his desk clean and organized. These were not massive life changes. They were small, almost invisible habits. But as the years went by, these small decisions compounded. Because he was calm, his students respected him, and his home life was peaceful. Because he saved his money instead of spending it impulsively, he was able to buy a small house by the beach when he retired. Because he was reliable, he had deep friendships that lasted for decades. When Elias was an old man, people often asked him for advice. They wanted to know the secret to his happy life. He would smile and say, "I just decided every day to be the man I wanted to be, one small choice at a time." Elias's story shows us that you don't need to make one giant, perfect decision to change your life. You just need to win the small moments. You win the morning by deciding to get up. You win your health by deciding to walk. You win your relationships by deciding to listen. As we approach the conclusion of this episode, I want to speak briefly about regret. Many of us carry heavy backpacks filled with regret from the past. We think about the job we didn't take, the relationship we messed up, or the money we lost. We replay these scenes in our heads, wishing we could go back and choose differently. But as we discussed earlier, dwelling on the past is a waste of your precious energy. You cannot change the past. It is done. The person you were back then made the decision with the information, the emotional maturity, and the resources you had at that time. It is unfair to judge your past self with the wisdom you have today. Hindsight is always 20/20. Instead of regret, try to view your past with compassion and gratitude. You can tell yourself, "I did the best I could then, but I know better now, so I will do better now." Every mistake was a stepping stone that brought you to this moment, to this podcast, to this awareness. If you hadn't made those mistakes, you wouldn't be the person you are today, ready to improve and grow. Forgive yourself. It is time to put down the heavy backpack. You can't walk forward into a bright future if you are constantly looking backward at the shadows. So, how do we tie all of this together? How do we move from listening to a podcast to actually living a life of better decisions? It starts with intention. Right now, in this moment, set an intention to be more mindful. Set an intention to pause before reacting. Set an intention to be kind to yourself when you mess up. Remember the tools we discussed. Remember the 24-hour rule. Remember the 3-option method. Remember to check your values. But most of all, remember that you are the captain of your ship. The ocean of life may be stormy sometimes, and the wind may blow you off course, but you always have the rudder. You always have the ability to steer back in the direction you want to go. Do not give your power away to circumstances or to other people. Trust your inner voice. Trust the process of growth. And trust that you are capable of handling whatever comes your way. I want to take this moment to thank you deeply for being here with me. for this extended episode. Listening for this long shows that you are serious about your English and serious about your personal growth. That dedication is rare and beautiful. By practicing your listening with these longer episodes, you are training your brain to process English faster and more deeply. You are not just learning words, you are absorbing the rhythm, the emotion, and the logic of the language. To help you consolidate what you have learned, I have a small task for you. I want you to take 5 minutes today to write down one decision you have been putting off. Just one. Then, apply one of the tools we talked about. Maybe use the 10-10-10 rule to see how it will affect your future. Or maybe use the 3-option method to find a creative solution. And then, take one small action. Send the email. Make the phone call. Put on your running shoes. Do something small that moves the needle. Action is the antidote to fear. Before I say goodbye, I want to remind you that English in Fluency is here to support you every step of the way. Making better decisions and learning a language are both journeys that require patience and consistency. Don't be too hard on yourself if you have a bad day, or if you feel like you aren't progressing fast enough. Language learning is like a wave. Sometimes you ride high, and sometimes you feel like you are underwater. But if you keep showing up, if you keep listening, if you keep speaking, and if you keep trying to make better choices, you will reach the shore. You will become fluent. You will become the person you dream of being. We have so many more resources and episodes for you to explore. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Share this episode with a friend who might need to hear this message. We grow better when we grow together. As we close, I want you to imagine your future self. Imagine the version of you who has mastered this skill of decision-making. That version of you is calm, confident, and happy. They look back at you right now with a smile, full of pride for the steps you are taking today. That future you is waiting for you. Every good decision you make brings you closer to them. So, go out into the world and make those decisions with courage. Make them with love. Make them with awareness. And remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Thank you for listening to English in Fluency. I am Alex, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care of yourself and keep moving forward.